I'll be bringing you up to speed on all of the leagues happening around the world this evening. Hi, I'm Paul, the guy behind DrivingMaul, your best place rugby predictions and opinion. And hello to everyone who is in the live chat. Yes, for those of you that don't know, Rugby Chat goes live at 8 p.m. every Tuesday, New Zealand time. So if you're listening to the podcast or watching the replay, you can join us live and put comments in the live chat for me. If there are questions and things, obviously I'll answer them. Just please keep them to about rugby. So let's kick off and do a quick roundup, go around the leagues to show you what's been going on. First up, we have, hi John, John O'Connor. I think he's expecting to join in. He didn't reply. John, you didn't reply to my phone, my text. So I didn't know if you were going to be joining me, but it looks like you are, so I'll dial you in. So, Will wants, good evening, John. How are you doing, sir?
Okay, and yourself, mate?
Good, thank you. Sorry, I didn't realise you were going to be available. So, but great of you to join us. Thank you. I thought we'd just pop around first the leagues as to what's been going on. For those who want to know about not Major League Rugby, I've gone blank. The Mighty 10 Cup and the Farah Palmer Cup. Then check out the show last night. We're down to the last round coming up before the finals in that competition. And we did a show last night all about that one. This coming weekend, by the way, if you're up in Whangarei, there will be a double header, Farah Palmer Cup championship quarterfinal, followed by the Mighty 10 Cup. And myself and Stephen Harris will be up at those two games. Do say hi if you're up there. But straight away, let's go on to the Guinness Pro 14 that has we're 2 rounds in now, and you can see the effects of the Rugby World Cup already. Teams like Ospreys, Zebre, Glasgow, who are heavily impacted by players off at the Rugby World Cup, have lost both their games, whereas teams like the Cheetahs, who I don't think have anybody at the Rugby World Cup with South Africa, have won 2. Have a points difference of 71 already over 2 games. Wow. Running these competitions during the Rugby World Cup does add a bit of what's the word I'm looking for? A bit of guesswork about it. Mm-hmm. Teams like Leinster and Munster, who are used to fighting on 2 fronts, obviously with the European Champions Cup, they're doing well. As well, they've both won their games, and teams and the Southern Kings. Well, I'm not sure how much help you can give them because they've still lost both their games as well.
Yeah, and they don't have anybody that's been called up to the Springboks. So
no.
So yeah, all told, a bit of a problem child is the Southern Kings.
Absolutely. So there you go. So yeah, it's kind of your usual suspects in Leinster, Munster doing well. Edinburgh Scarlets also doing pretty well, and the Cheetahs. If you remember, Scarlets did very well 4 years ago during the Rugby World Cup as well. Over on the top 14, they are 6 rounds in already. That's just crazy.
It's ridiculous. And if there's ever a reason, if anybody asks why we should have a united season in the world when it comes to rugby, you can just look at what's happening at the moment. The French Pro 14 is 6 rounds in, and we're coming up for the last group matches of the World Cup. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yep. Sorry, I was just trying to move us around to get out of the way of the table. Lyon, top of the table with 6 wins at the moment, 5 points clear of Bordeaux. Clermont's doing pretty well up in 4th, but teams like Toulouse and Racing 92 down in 10th and 13th. Racing 92 in 10th and Toulouse in 13th tells you kind of how much the Rugby World Cup impacts this tournament. And which is why the Guinness Premiership is doing its Premiership Cup, which is their development tournament during this time, and makes a lot of sense. And then you got to look at teams like POW up in 6th. They'll be thinking, fantastic. We're normally just above the relegation zone, and hey, we're in the top half of the table. This is good for us. But yes. The NRC is one round away from its finals. The Force, unsurprisingly enough, who have had their players all together, top the table. With Canberra Vikings, New South Wales Country Eagles and Queensland Country currently in those playoff positions. The Fiji Drua and Brisbane City are 1 point out with this one more round to go. So most of the teams in with a shout, apart from Sydney, who have only had one win this season.
By the way, excuse me because I didn't catch your 1 to 10 update yesterday, but do you see anybody stopping Tasman?
No. Put bluntly. They have just been, Tasman have been fantastic. I can't see anyone beating in the Premiership, so Tasman and Wellington are probably going to get the home semi-finals, and then Tasman will have a home final and should win it at last. They went close a few years ago, but lost to Taranaki. So it'll be good to get one of the sort of, because in Canterbury have won something like 10 out of the last 12, with Taranaki and Auckland getting one each. So it'll be good to have one of the smaller provinces to pick up a title.
Who is their coach?
Good question.
I only ask the best, mate.
I've forgotten who their coach is, to be honest.
I'm sure one of our avid listeners and watchers will send in the answer shortly.
Yes, give us a quick do a quick Google search, folks, please. And then in the Championship, you've got Hawke's Bay and Bay of Plenty, who are 1 and 2. Hawke's Bay have got to beat Tasman this weekend to hold on to that top place. So it'll be interesting to see whether they do or not. And yes, between the two of them, I can't see the other sides, Manawatu, Otago or Taranaki, causing those two sides any trouble. So it's going to that'll be a good final though between those two. And the final point, I guess, is that Counties Manukau have been relegated from the Premiership to the Championship and are already looking for a new head coach for next season. So anyone who fancies being a coach of a Mitre 10 Cup side, you can just go on to Seek and you can find the job being advertised there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, what could be easier than handling the players and the union that is Counties Manukau? I mean, really.
Exactly. It's
wow. And in fact, let's just be honest. Anything to do with the Greater Auckland region when it comes to rugby is just an absolute headache.
I mean, that's dealing with that's they aren't part of the Blues; they're part of the Chiefs. To be fair, so it is a bit different. Is their area, but they are short on cash. There's no two ways about it. That cash is a problem there. They have a lot of volunteers who help out on game day. We're talking about a professional sort of club here, or professional outfit, having to use volunteers to help with media and other things. And that's not sustainable for this level of competition, really.
Yeah. No wonder they're being relegated.
So, yep. So that's the NRC coming to a close. So let's move on to what we're really going to talk about for the meter today is essentially the Rugby
There's
World
something
Cup.
else been going on in rugby.
Yes, exactly. The big thing.
Have we had some other tournament competition? I don't know.
It's great. Okay, look, it's the biggest opportunity for us creators to make a splash and to build an audience and all of that kind of thing. But it is also absolutely knackering. I've been running on fumes for the past few days. I mean, yesterday during the Mitre 10 Cup game, I was getting mixed up between games. My head was dribbling out my ears. I've got another friend, Cornflake, Steve. He's lost his voice from doing so many shows And I know other creators who have been sick because they've just been trying to do too much during this time, and it is very, very, very difficult. But Jack, you're right. We're almost at the quarterfinal stage, and then things do start to get easier. There's only games at weekends. We're not up till 2 o'clock in the morning during during midweek.
Right.
So I thought we should catch up on the games that we missed. That have happened since last Wednesday. There's quite a few of them, so we don't have to go into them in depth, but just sort of pull out the key points. Last Wednesday we had France beating the USA 33-9. I guess my only point here, my thought from here is that that the USA have been disappointing in this tournament. I was hoping for so much more out of them.
Yeah, but let's be realistic here. They do not have a large number of their players that are playing regular rugby at a high level, right? And the same goes with Canada. Yep. So although they have Major League Rugby, and although they are improving, and if you think about it, once upon a time to lose by only 24 points to France would have been considered quite an achievement by them. As long as they don't have a core of their team that is not playing at that very high level, this is what you're going to see. Is they either have to lift their whole competition, or they have to bite the bullet and realize they need to farm out some of their players to the top leagues. It's the same principle as they are facing in their football, and that is if they want to do well or reach knockout rounds at a soccer World Cup, they need to have players that are playing regularly in the top leagues, so that they're exposed to the speed of play that they're going to be exposed to.
And to be fair to the USA, they do try and get their players into top leagues. They don't only select from Major League Rugby or anything like that. It's just because all the leagues in Europe have got a cap on number of foreign players. The reason you see so many Pacific Islanders there is that Pacific Islanders don't actually count towards that foreign pool.
No, I wonder why. I wonder.
Now there's two views, right? There's the view that you're about to tell us but then there's also the other side of it is, look, they don't have the opportunity of earning a living at home playing this sport. So yeah.
No, I don't begrudge the players, right? And we shouldn't begrudge players who have an ability to play. Good on them for providing for their families and for their future. But the two-facedness of that kind of principle, where Pacific Islanders don't count towards the foreign quota, but players from New Zealand, South Africa, and Australia who have strong voting rights within the IRB, no, we'll count your players, right?
Well, except a lot of those players have got...
Be that as it may, we never hold it against the players themselves. You can't. Yeah. I mean, this is a profession, right?
Exactly. So, I mean, I guess the only sort of thoughts from the French point of view is that apparently the players' captain isn't currently the coach's captain, and the captain and the coaches have fallen out, which is just such typical France.
In the middle of a tournament.
In the middle of a tournament, exactly.
The biggest
tournament in the world, yes, that they're involved in, and they can't, and they've fallen out. So, who knows what we're going to see from France going forwards? As I say, it looks like
they'll probably make it to the semi-final or something. Like in the midst of all this turmoil, they'll,
Yep.
Beware of whoever has to play them. Beware, they'll probably just pitch up and turn on the magic, and you go, "How do they do this?" And you'll just go, "It's the French. It is the French."
So, good luck, Wales, in the quarterfinals, is all I can say. Moving on, then we had New Zealand beating Canada 63-0. I don't think we learned anything from that game. I mean, well done, New Zealand. Got the try bonus point as expected.
Mm-hmm.
The next one I think was maybe a bit of a surprise. Georgia 10, Fiji 45.
It was glorious to watch. right? And you watch Fiji play, you watch the sheer exuberance with which they play, and you go, how good would rugby be if Fiji had a level playing field? Because let's face it, that's a small group of islands, and we've said this before, there are more people of Pacific Island descent living in South Auckland, that's the county's Manukau region, than there are in the entire Pacific. So the population of Fiji is small, and yet they produce the most incredible athletes. And I think, in fact, I know it was Nick Mallet who said that genetically, the Fijians are the most gifted genetically to play rugby group of people in the world, right? And you just look at those athletes and you look at their skills and you look at their ability, and you know if the Fijian Rugby Union had the same, well, there's lots of ifs in the world, but you just know that we as rugby fans, and I'm not necessarily saying fans of our particular team, I'm talking people who love the game, how blessed we would be if they had the same opportunities and the same resources, because they add so much to this game. They bring so much to this game. And to see the contrast between the styles of Georgia and Fiji was just wonderful, right? And it does show you that, I mean, Georgia has some serious athletes and some serious specimens, but it shows you that rugby is at its best and is at its most successful, so far as winning is concerned, when it is played with a focus on moving the ball into space by people who have the skills to move it into space.
And that's what rugby is all about. I mean, rugby is about finding the space. At the end of the day, people say it's a collision sport or whatever, but no, it's when played properly, it's about finding the space, exactly. And which is kind of interesting. And one of the things that I found that interesting was that basketball was invented as something for rugby players to do during the off season. And was a training way of and actually the guy who invented basketball was about rugby, and so a lot of the movement and finding space that you find in basketball becomes relevant to rugby.
Wow, did not know that.
So, and it's why when they actually when they're talking about which players of crossover players, everyone immediately thinks of NFL, but actually in reality it's the NBA players. Who are some of the best, some of them got the best sort of basic skills, not basic or baseline of skills for rugby. So that's that one. Ollie Brown says, good to see the Fiji scrum as well. And if you're going to play Georgia, you've got to hold up. You've got to at least be at least try and hold up your scrum, because otherwise that's where they go, and that's what they did against Namibia. I'm not sure if we've actually probably got that game coming up. Ireland versus Russia, 35-0.
By the way, just a final comment, that by the end of that match against Georgia, it was as if the Fijians had reached their hand into that Georgian team's heart and just removed it and ripped the heart right out of them, because they were scrumming the Georgian scrum by the end, right? And I know not all of that has to do completely with scrumming. It has to do with heart and just seeing the game disappearing into the distance. But they really did a number on that Georgian team. And I think probably for the future of Georgian rugby, it's hard to stomach when you see your team taken to the cleaners like that. But for the future of Georgian rugby, best thing that could have happened to them. It's something that Argentina faced up to, that they couldn't expect to win, playing the kind of conservative, keeping the score down rugby that they used to, right? And that led to them eviscerating Ireland in the last World Cup in the quarterfinals by just running the ball magnificently. So I think probably the best possible outcome in the long term for Georgian rugby is to realize if they want to be a serious player in the rugby world stage, they need to look at moving the ball into space.
Yeah, absolutely. one of the things that's a video that I'm going to be doing for my supporters, not this week but next week, we'll be looking at ways that I think the playing field between Tier 1 and Tier 2 could be evened out in a way that isn't just pure money. So if you want to become a supporter of the channel, there's a link down below, drivingmaul.com/Patreon, where I'll be, where you can get access to those videos. Next up, Ireland, Russia, 35-0. Pretty much what we were kind of expecting. Sexton was back in this game from memory, so I think that's probably be the big plus for Ireland, because they are going to need him when it comes to the quarterfinals. And his only other appearance before this, he was clearly injured and not playing well. Any other comments on this one? I think that's pretty much.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, there's a lot of focus on Conor Murray, and he is important. But I think that they are a very different team when Sexton is playing, because although his kicking is great, and when I say kicking, both out of hand and full poles is great, his ability to control the game and to bring his outside backs into the game, and including that very dangerous winger who has such a good strike rate. What's his name?
Stockdale.
Yes, that one. And yes, he brings a whole different element to their attack.
Yeah, he does, and it's not as bad as it used to be, but in the drop off between him and the next level. But the drop off between him and the next level compared to the drop off between Murray and the next level is so much greater. It's not that necessarily you could argue that they're both equally good players, obviously from different positions between Murray and Sexton, but it's a difference between them and the next player that comes on that's a big thing. Ollie Brown credits the Russian defence, and I think that's one of the things we've seen from teams like Russia and Namibia is the heart and the structures have improved, and the way defensively they are much better teams and harder to break down than they used to be.
Yes.
And kudos has to go to World Rugby on the coaching for that side of things. And when they say they've put X million into the Tier 2 nations over the last 4 years, it's been coaching. It's not been paying players, and that's where the money goes. And that's what we're seeing is why we're seeing the difference in the levels of the scores.
Yeah, there've been a couple of players that have stood out to me from among these Tier 2 nations. The number 8 for Georgia, young man.
Yep.
Gorgodze, not
Gorgodze, but Gorgodze. Yep.
Gorgodze, not Gorgonzola or Godzilla. That one,
yeah, Godzilla or Gorgodze. Yep.
Yeah, the young guy is a really good player.
Yep.
The halfback for Namibia that played against the All Blacks, youngster.
Yep.
Really good player. Really deserves a place in one of the major competitions like Super Rugby. Currently plays for Boland in the Currie Cup in South Africa. There've been a couple of players that have really stood out as being, real finds from these smaller nations.
Ollie Brown says the difference between Tier 1 and Tier 2 is out now athletes. Yeah, it's not entirely that. Part of it, I mean, there is an element. Shorta Hori, I think, is the player that Alex has mentioned. Is that the scrum half?
The winger. That's I'm talking about the scrum half for Namibia.
Okay, that must be the someone else. And that's the hooker for Japan.
Is the wing, isn't Shorta Hori the wing for Japan?
The hooker for Japan.
The hooker for Japan.
That's right.
Okay. Also, really good player.
So Ollie Brown says the real difference between Tier 1 and Tier 2 is out and out athletes. It's not just Noel. Some of that, but also it's the amount of rugby they play at a high level, and therefore they're getting used to the pace and the time. If you watch someone come up from have their debut at Super Rugby after playing, say, Mitre 10, and you ask them what was the difference, it's time. Yeah, they just don't have the time to make the decision. So hold the decision-making sort of things.
Just to reply to Ollie as well is that it's really unfair. I think you almost need to take the All Blacks and move them out, and possibly the Springboks and move them out, but definitely the All Blacks, because the All Blacks have sprinkled throughout the team these incredible game breakers, whereas most other teams in the competition have 2 or 3 or maybe even one absolutely scintillating players, like maybe Stuart Hogg for Scotland, right? Or there's a couple in England like Itoje, right? Great athletes. But the rest of them play, as you say, at that high level week after week. They're playing in good competitions. Just that's the competitions below international level, and then those players also get to play regular test matches.
Yeah.
So they are.
That was the other point I was going to make.
Yeah, and then they are used to playing at that sort of speed and intensity, and they're used to coming up against the absolutely top tier athletes.
But also they're used to playing with each other, right? Whereas
exactly.
A lot of these Georgian teams or your Russias or etc., if they only get 5 games a year together with that coach, with those systems, that's 5 games. Whereas New Zealand get 14. New Zealand, England, South Africa, Ireland, they all have training camps in the middle of the season as well. Which if you think that the World Rugby regulation says you only have to give up the players 2 weeks before an international. So that means basically they have about 4 weeks, 2 weeks in June or before the June tests, which will be July next year, and 2 weeks before the November tests. They have 4 weeks a year with the players, and they only get 5 or 6 games. Whereas someone like Eddie Jones and Steve Hansen, they will have something closer to like 2 months or 3 months with the actual players plus those games. So that's also a big difference as well.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. Remember, back in the old days of amateurism, the rules were if you were the home test team, your team was only allowed to assemble on the Monday before a test. That was it.
Wow.
The touring team would have an advantage because they would have assembled before they left their home country, and they would have had some practices and the tour and some warm-up games, and then led into the first test of the series. But the home team, the first time they would gather would be the Monday before the test.
Wow, there we go. So yeah, it's moved on from then massively, clearly, as we've sort of pointed out. Now then, South Africa 49, Italy 3. But at the end of the day, it wasn't the score that everyone was talking about. It was the idiotic tackle by 2 Italian props. Look, Wayne Barnes talked it through and did everything properly. From what I understand is you can only blame one person for an action, hence why only one of the players got a red card at the time. The fact they both got cited is correct, and the fact they've both been banned obviously is correct as well. Both got 3 weeks each. Now, that's the sort of same level as the American player who did the high tackle, the 2 Samoan players, Reece Hodge with the high tackles. So it's kind of consistent with something happened with the head, you get 3 weeks. But that one was a little bit kind of... that's been illegal forever. There's
Remember, 2011, Sam Warburton.
Yep.
Right? And you and I were watching that game together, and I made the comments, it's not just about Warburton's red card, but in the intervening 8 years since that semi-final, as hard as it was for Wales, right? And I really do believe that he wasn't intentionally malicious, Warburton, right? But it's not just about that moment, and it's not about intent. It's about all the other rugby players from the highest level all the way down to under nines, right, or under sevens or under sixes, whatever it might be, that are playing rugby. All the players that were saved potentially serious injury, right up to death, by the fact that Warburton got a red card. So you're absolutely right. It's 8 years ago that a red card was given out in a semi-final of a World Cup. Right?
And but that was also that was a tackle while the game was on. This was after the whistle was blown, and wasn't even and it was all So, but 3 weeks feels a bit lenient, but I'm not totally anti. I'm not throwing my toys out the pram about it. Piece. Now we'll jump to this now because everyone's comparing it.
Hang on a second.
Sorry,
I get the problem that we have here, and I know you don't want to linger on referees, and I know that really gets your goat because it steals from the enjoyment of the rugby. But the problem that we are facing in this World Cup is the inconsistency, and we know in the first weekend there were a whole lot of problems, and then note that rugby, the international rugby came out and said they weren't happy with what the decisions were made. But it is the level of inconsistency that we're talking about here. So Reece Hodge committed a bad tackle. The result was very bad for Fiji, right?
Yep.
In that they lost their most impactful player. I'm not saying the result would have changed, but they certainly lost the most impactful player up until that moment in both sides, right?
Yep.
But what he did was clumsy but brave. So he'd already been treated like a speed bump at least 3 times before that. And he threw himself in front of the player with terrible tackle technique, but he bravely he just flung himself in front of the player, right? In a desperation attempt. Right?
Yep.
And that's different from after the whistle, 2 guys picking somebody up, turning them over and dropping them on the head. There is a difference. And you are absolutely right that the one gets 3 weeks for clumsiness, for brave clumsiness or clumsy bravery, right?
Yep.
It was still wrong. Don't do that, right? Versus what is very clearly out and out thuggery, right? And the fact that those 2 get the same doesn't sit well. And then you have, at the other end of the scale, you have Joe Moody, who nobody seems to be talking about, right? Who dropped his shoulder and went into the back of Malcolm Marx's head and neck, going like this, right? And not only no penalty, no card, no citing. And so it is this level of how can we say, it's this inconsistency that drives the fans bananas, right? And that's where we need to get some level of
the inconsistency that people are talking about at the moment is the Lavanini one, which is where I was going to go next, actually. So I was going to continue talking about about discipline. Yeah, so Lavanini, high tackle on Owen Farrell, and gets a red card for it. Now, there are people doing comparisons to the Piers Francis one and taking screenshots and saying, hey, look, they look exactly the same. A couple of things here. Things aren't judged on screenshots. Things are judged as a motion. So you can't take 2 screenshots and say things look exactly the same.
The way, just to support what you're saying, notice how the referees, before they card somebody, they talk about, are there any mitigating circumstances leading up? So what happened before the screenshot is taken is very important. Is the player dropping?
Yep.
Right? Is the player who gets tackled, is he falling? Right?
Not is he fallen? Is it not? Yeah. Not what's the position? Not what's purely the position of contact. Yeah. How's he moving before contact? Yeah. Now, whether you like it or not, the decision there was that the player that Piers Francis was tackling was falling, and that's what caused it. Now, you may disagree with that with that decision, but that was the decision. Whereas the decision for was that Farrell hadn't started. He just braced himself. He hadn't actually started dropping. So there isn't necessarily that inconsistency there. Lavanini then went and got 4 weeks, which is more than somebody who deliberately picks someone up and drops them on the head. Now, what you've also got to remember then is when they make the decision around the punishment, it's not purely on what happened, but it's also on your rap sheet. Lavanini's rap sheet is as long as my arm. He's the second most carded player in international rugby ever. He's the equal most red carded player in international rugby ever, and he's still got a 44% reduction in his crime for good behaviour. Now he didn't get the full 50. How he got 44, I don't know. But anyone
he shouldn't have got any reduction.
No,
for he's recidivist. He's a repeat offender.
Yep.
Right. And you hit the nail on the head. And I'll go so this is not to blow my own trumpet here, but it's to point out the accuracy of what you were saying. Is you and I were watching this with my son.
Yep.
And it wasn't 5 minutes before. It was probably about 3 minutes before that tackle. I pointed Lavanini out to my son, and what did I say to him?
He's a card waiting to happen. Yeah.
Yes, I said that's a head case there. That guy he's an absolute head case, right? And 3 minutes later, red card, right? So and I'm not an Argentine supporter, although I do enjoy Argentine rugby, and I wish the absolute best for them. But if I could know that, and he has this kind of rap sheet, I don't think the guy should have got any reduction because he's not learning.
Yep.
Right? It just now in the NFL, they've banned somebody for the rest of the season. Right? It's going to cost the player millions of dollars, a player by the name of Vontaze Burfict. But he is a repeat offender, and they reached the stage, and it turns out they called him in and they said, if you do this again, you're gone. And he's gone 4 games in, a bad tackle, head down, hit somebody in the head, gone for 12 games, right? And it's cost millions of dollars. You shouldn't have got any reduction at all because you're not going to get him to stop doing what you've done before.
Yep.
And he cost Argentina, he cost them dearly.
Oh, absolutely.
Because the game was over at that point.
Yep, it was. But let's be clear here, folks. It's not World Rugby's fault. It's not the referee's fault. It's the players' fault that game was over then. And we shouldn't. And so hence, and we need to keep the full red card deterrent to try and stop these, rather than letting the player be replaced after 10 minutes just so we have a game to watch. No. Yeah. We need to. We need the proper deterrent around these sort of things. So I think the red card is right. So it doesn't surprise me that Lavanini got more than those other 2 players. I think he should have got more. He should have been at the full 6, and 3 sounds low for them as well because, as you say, comparing that to Hodge or the Samoan ones where it's clumsy, it's not deliberate, it's drawing play, to something that's deliberate after the whistle has gone, is very different. So that's that. I think we've probably covered off.
Can I just say to the people who are watching is remember the number one function of the referee is to ensure the safety of the players. The ref cannot protect Owen Farrell after he's been hit in the head. Obviously, it's occurred already. The point is protecting the players after that occurs by letting everybody know without question what is going to happen if they do that again. Right?
Yep.
So, and it's more than that. It's not only the players in the rest of the 60 minutes that might be left of that game, so that they know, hey, if I do that and I hit somebody in the head, this is what's going to happen to me. It's not only there, it's all the rugby players around the world that will play in the match the next weekend.
Yep.
From, as we said, about Warburton's tip tackle, right, where from the very lowest to the very highest level, they know that is unacceptable. And it's about saving all the people that receive tackles that are being tackled the next weekend and the coming weeks and months. So they are being saved by seeing that, and potential tacklers go, oh, I better get down, right? And the third thing that it does is there are mothers who are watching those games, and the mothers see somebody hit like that and get a red card. It's a reassurance to them that it's unacceptable. That happens and the person doesn't get a red card and they think, I'm not having my son play this game.
Mothers and fathers, by the way.
Oh, yeah. But you know what I'm saying.
I guess I know what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying?
No, exactly.
That's why when Sonny Bill Williams, who I'm a huge supporter of, when he got his red card against the Lions, I felt relieved. My sons were playing rugby, and I thought to myself, at least I know if my son is being wrapped up by another player and somebody comes in, that player knows what happened to Sonny Bill.
Yep.
And my son is unlikely to get a shoulder into his jaw, right, while his hands are wrapped up like this. Okay, so it's not simply about that particular act. It's the rest. And the safety of the players is more important. Remember, it's not just the players in that game.
Yep. The safety of all players is more important than the watching public.
Yeah. Than what we're watching, right?
So.
By the way. Sorry.
Go on.
Can we talk about the commentator in that Argentina-England game, at least the coverage that we got?
Go on.
Scotty Stevenson, right?
Yep.
I will just point out to the listeners, there were two things that he did that are just the red card incident. We have the full feed from the referee, and Barnes stands there and he goes through it step by step. He looks, he discusses, he says, okay, this is what I see. Argentina had a penalty advantage.
Sorry, it wasn't Wayne Barnes. Wayne Barnes
wrong game. Sorry, the South Africa Italy game.
All right, yeah, go on.
Sorry, I got my games mixed up. So he says, sorry. So this is Scotty Stevenson. So the two players pick Dwayne Vermeulen up, dump him on his head. Now Wayne Barnes is running through what he sees, right, with the TMO, and he's got the touch judges standing there. And he looks, he says, okay, I've seen it. This is what I said. There was a playing advantage to Italy. Mm-hmm. Dwayne Vermeulen then wins the ball from an onside position, wins it legally, so advantage is over. There's no advantage. I blow the whistle, right? And then after the whistle, the two players pick him up, drop him on his head.
Yep.
Yeah, takes it out. Yes, we agree. Takes out, gives the red card.
Oh, yeah, I know you're going with this one. Yep.
The camera pans back, and Scotty Stevenson says, look, I understand how the Italians would be frustrated because Dwayne Vermeulen stole the ball in an offside position. It was a professional foul that he did there, so I can understand their frustration, but there's no excuse for that behavior. And we're sitting watching, and I'm going, did you not hear the ref? Right? So that was number one. That's just like not at the moment critique if you was to pay attention to anything in that game, what came out of the referee's mouth about a potential, what looked like a red card before you even gave it, is the thing that you, the commentator, should pay attention to, right?
Yep.
And the other one was in the second half when Makazola Mapimpi scored a try and he burst the last tackle. And as he takes off and he's 10 meters out from the line, there's nobody's there, and he's going in for the try. And Scotty Stevenson shouts, Lucanio arm! And then he realizes he's got the wrong player. He goes, Lucanio arm ran a wonderful dummy line, making it possible for Makazola Mapimpi to score under the poles.
And that wasn't even on the pitch. Yeah, no, that's...
Lucanio arm had been substituted. He was sitting on the bench when Mapimpi scored. And I just oh my gosh, anybody can make a mistake. Anybody can make a mistake. But when you try and cover it up in the middle of a broadcast by saying somebody did something and that person's on the bench, oh my word.
Now, we got a taste as to why he was trying to cover up straight after that game as the bomb squad circled up and one of the other players who wasn't part of the bomb squad, which is the bomb squad for South Africa, is the bench because they come on to defuse situations. Who it wasn't part of the squad got excluded from that hug because he wasn't part of the bomb squad. And it was also in reference to another player who was out of shot, who had been selected for the first time and wasn't part of the bomb squad for the first time. So they huddled up deliberately to disallow the player out of shot from the huddle because he wasn't part of the bomb squad. One of the other player in shot happened to be a player of colour, and all the bomb squad happened to be players of white. And he notices what was going on, so he walked away from it. And that's caused an absolute uproar in South
social
Africa,
media.
in social media. Now, they've come out and explained it.
Including a player of colour explained it and said, it's nothing. Yeah. This is what was happening, yeah.
Now, I watched it and went, okay, what's happening here is something in a team squad where where you do have times where you have jokes with players and jokes with other people, just like in any group of friends. But the problem was the optics were bad.
Yes.
And it was... it was unfortunate. And now it's been explained. So that was the other talking point from here. So look, guys, it doesn't matter what you do. At some point, race is going to get included on social media about the South Africa team, and that's just disappointing, unfortunately.
Well, I think what happened is when it comes to the and Mapimpi issue with Stevenson, I think he panicked. So as he was calling the wrong black player's name as another player crossed the line, he suddenly saw in his mind the fact that he had confused two black players with each other, right? Which he could potentially be pointed out for that whole thing of they all look the same to the white people, right?
Yeah. I gotta say that you can understand why he was trying to cover up, but I'm just saying, people make mistakes. Just live with it. Yeah.
Just live with it, right? And he panicked, and then he tried to cover it up. But the thing is, as always, when you lie to cover up something, the hole just gets deeper.
Yeah.
And so to wind up coming up with something about somebody who's sitting on the bench over there, anyway, he looked like a right pork chop for the second time in that game.
Yeah. The people are saying that that it's refreshing to have a new commentary team. It is, except Stephen Donald is awful. That's a personal opinion. Anyway, running. So Australia beat Uruguay 45-10. Same stories we had from other games where Uruguay defended well initially and then it ran away from them as they got tired.
Mm-hmm.
England, Argentina, we've kind of talked about. I think England have so far done everything they needed to, got all the points. We haven't necessarily seen the cutting attacking intent that they'll need later in the tournament, but then again, they've not needed it yet. So we'll see.
But they might need it this weekend against France.
They might need it this weekend against France. Yes, it's very true, Alex. Yes, I had low expectations of Beaver, so it wasn't so bad for me. Yes, Beaver is awful. And Loffy, who says, I mistake people all the time, people overreacting. Yeah, no, absolutely. We're talking about how he tried to cover up, not the fact that he actually mistook people. That was the was kind of we expect people to mistake people. It's going to happen.
I would have just laughed off if he'd gone, you can't, I'm sorry, that's Makazola Mapimpi.
Yes.
Right? That's quite fun, right? It's the cover-up that we're laughing at. And by the way, so far as Beaver is concerned, I don't blame Beaver at all. Because how much commentating has Beaver actually done? Right?
But he's in there to be the insightful expert. And
yes, but this is a skill, right?
Yep.
Commentating is a skill. The best ones in the world didn't start off as the best ones in the world, right? They've been working at it and they've had reps, just like the best rugby players in the world when they first started playing rugby didn't run on the field and know what to do. It takes practice and it takes development. And Beaver's been thrown into the biggest tournament in the world, right? Mm-hmm. Almost as a beginner. So I don't blame him at all.
He shouldn't have been selected. He shouldn't. Yeah, they should have found someone else who's got experience. Put bluntly.
You've got experience.
Japan beat Samoa 38-19. I think we all expected that. And I think I was going to come on to it later, but we'll quickly talk about it now. 8 teams have have qualified already for the 2023 Rugby World Cup. Those are Japan, Ireland, New Zealand, South Africa, Italy, England, France, and Australia. The fact that no one has mentioned this, that Japan have automatically qualified for the next tournament, the first time they ever automatically qualified was for this tournament, and they've gone and done it again. Sorry?
And they qualified as the host.
Well, no, yeah, but they also qualified as host, but they also came third in their group in 2015, which is the first time they'd ever done that.
That's awesome.
They've already secured that with a game to go, and no one's talking about it because we expect them to, and that just shows you the rise we've seen from them. No one expected them to be top three in 2015, sorry, and yet now we expect them to automatically qualify. So, and that's the rise of Japan is fantastic.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And the sooner they get into one of the top yearly competitions, the better.
Yep, agreed. Someone says, I live in Australia. I'm so glad Fox Sports doesn't have the rights to commentate anything but Wallabies games. No. The Fox Sports have the right to put any commentary they like over for Australia. They only pay for it for Australian ones and decide to use the world feed for all the others because it's cheaper. I think you'll find, Ollie. That's why. It's about cost. It's not about having the rights to. Yeah, we all miss Bill McLaren. He was fantastic as a commentator.
13 stone. Everything was in stone.
Of course it is. I still think in stone, not in kgs. New Zealand beat Namibia. Again, Namibia spirited defence early on and then just succumbed. France, Tonga. I stayed up for this one thinking, you know what, there's an opportunity, an upset here. But
and it was.
You think so?
Well, how close was the score?
23-21. Yeah, you're right. It was very close. France. So France have been showing in spits and sparts that they're really good. The problem is they can't put together more than 40 minutes of rugby, which is going to be their downfall going forwards, I think. One other point, I guess. So the other four teams we expect to get through are Scotland, Argentina, Wales, and Fiji over the next few days. The reason Wales and Scotland haven't automatically got it yet is they've only played 2 games each, not 3 like everybody else. Just as kind of FYI for people. I will be talking about France 2023. I'll be doing a video tomorrow looking at which countries that haven't hosted the Rugby World Cup so far could host the Rugby World Cup in future. Right. So if you want to get that, become a supporter down below, patreon.com/DrivingMaul. We need to look forward to some games now. In a few hours, because we've got South Africa versus Canada. That's not the hardest one to predict. It's going to be a big score by South Africa. We've already talked about Canada's shortcomings. Jack, we'll get on to Japan, whether they'll top the group when we talk about the last game, because they are the last one. Argentina, USA. I picked this one out pre-tournament as being a possible upset, because Argentina are coming off the back of playing England 4 days ago. But the USA have just given me nothing to believe they can do it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Scotland, Russia, that will see Scotland come third in the group at least and get the automatic qualification for 2023. And Wales, Fiji, Wales will win that one as well. Okay, go on then. Go on, John.
I think that could be an upset. I think that could be an upset. I know you. I think that could be an upset. There's a lot dependent on it, but I do think that we could see an upset there. It all depends on how rested and recovered the Fijians are, right? But the way they scrummed against Georgia, the way their forwards were playing, the brilliance that we saw, I wouldn't be surprised if that's an upset. And if they do beat Wales, then the papaya is properly in the fan when it comes to who goes through to the quarterfinals.
Well, yes, that does that. That's no, I don't. I think that Australia and Wales have done enough still to get through, even if Wales lose that one.
It depends on how much Fiji win by. If they win with a bonus point, they still have a chance, right? So it all comes down to that. Anyway, be that as it may, there's my pick for a potential upset.
Okay. The Welsh defence is going to be just too smothering, in my opinion. Australia will beat Georgia on the Friday. New Zealand will absolutely thrash Italy.
Yes.
And I think we'll have pretty much a New Zealand first team for that as well. With being a week out from the quarterfinals. Sorry?
It was good to see Brodie Retallick back, so I'm sure they'll give him another run.
Yes. And it was funny hearing people saying that Geordie was or wasn't an option at 10. People having different opinions there. The England versus France. Okay. Yes, France having issues around their captain, who's fallen out with their coaches. But we've just not seen enough from France to put together more than a half of rugby, whereas England are putting together full games of rugby, and that's going to be the difference between those two. Yes. Basically, at the end of the day. So France could.
I still think that France is very dangerous in a knockout position, in a knockout game, right? But to me, the one team that seems to have their number, that team in the white jerseys just seems to suck the life out of them. As much as the black jersey inspires the French, they seem to go all limp-wristed when they come up against the English.
We will, so we'll have a look at. But that's one of the two games to watch this weekend, though. I think one of the top two games is England-France. Yeah. Even though I can't see France winning it, they are a dangerous team. Ireland v Samoa will be a Ireland win. It'll be interesting to see what state Sexton's in for that one, and whether he survives it, because that'll decide how they go in the quarterfinals if they make it. Namibia, Canada should be an interesting one, actually. It's their final game. It's their Rugby World Cup final. Yes. I'm expecting Namibia to beat Canada in that one, even though they're the lower ranked team in the world standings.
Yes.
And I think that'll be great for Namibian rugby to get a win. USA.
If you think about Namibia went through, Namibia played South Africa and then New Zealand within the space of less than a week.
Yep.
Right? That's a hell of a demand. I mean, the South African forwards are, I think we've spoken about that, they are probably the most gnarly, damaging group of forwards in the competition. Right? And then after that, to be served up to the New Zealanders within less than a week of recovery, it's a hell of a it's the toughest 2-game stretch that any team has had in this competition by far.
It's the top two. Just having a quick look at Pool D. Now, if Fiji win with a bonus point, they would go on 12 points. Wales should beat Uruguay with a bonus point, so that should get them back above them. And Australia should beat Georgia, so that should mean that Fiji won't go through, even if they do beat Wales. But it is a possibility. USA Tonga, coming into this, you'd have said USA were the favourites for this one. But having seen them both play out this tournament, Tonga look the more dangerous. And I'm backing Tonga to win that one. Wales, Uruguay, we just talked about. And then the game of the weekend, Japan, Scotland. Obviously, watch England, France, watch Namibia, Canada. I think that'll be good. But Japan, Scotland is a game you cannot afford to miss. The bookies I got Japan at $3.05. They're now down to $2, which gives you an idea as to what the bookies think. I think Scotland are still favourites from the bookies' point of view, but I'm backing Japan at home to upset Scotland.
I think so too. I do.
Remember that whilst Scotland have rested, have we actually seen a Scotland lineup yet for? I'm trying to think if we have or not against Russia on Wednesday. So yes, it has been announced. Now I think they've basically rested everyone they can for that Russia game, but even so, some of those players will have to go back to back over 4 days before playing Japan, because you've only got 31 players there. You can only rest 8 players out of the match day 23. So yeah, it's got to be. That will also have an impact on Japan. So Japan will be doing everything in their power to give Russia all the help they can, mentally at least.
Yeah. No, I remember well 1995 when Japan played New Zealand and got beaten 145-0. And to think that they are on the verge of making it through to the quarterfinals. To think that you and I both feel that they are favourites to beat Scotland. It's a tremendous achievement.
It is.
And it's a tremendous achievement. And again, kudos to Japanese rugby. Kudos to the people who has said about developing this team and bringing about this change. My only hope is that there's a tide here, and my only hope is that World Rugby and the various, whether it's Sanzar or the people who really do control World Rugby, which is the 6 home unions and France, whether they actually wise up to the fact and make some decisions that are not in their interest but are in the best interest of the game, and that we utilize this opportunity to bring Japan into the fold of international rugby on a regular basis with the top nations, unlike 2007 where Argentina came third in the entire tournament and it took 4 years for them to be included in what was that before that, the Tri-Nations.
Yep.
So yeah, I hope people wise up. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, we should see Japan in the Rugby Championship soon, sooner rather than later, definitely. So yes, and the negotiations for that are it's in its current format definitely in 2020 between 2020, but 2021 is still open for debate as to because obviously the TV contracts will be renewing soon.
And the point is not just simply about them being competitive, which I think that they can. They will get beaten far more than they'll win. That's not the point. They will be competitive at the beginning, at home especially. But the point is there are, I don't know how many million Japanese, how many 1.2 billion Chinese, Cambodians, Vietnamese, etc. That whole section of the East will then have a team that they can look at that comes from their region that is competing, right? And it's about giving inspiration. The relevance of Siya Kolisi being captain of South Africa, that young black boys and girls in South Africa and throughout Africa can look and see that the Springbok captain is a black man and beloved and looked up to by his players. And what that does as an inspiration to think, well, if he can do it, I can do it. Right? So that's the point. It's the growth of the game.
Yep. Which is similar to why we need to see female rugby on TV more as well. So that girls can see that and go, oh, girls can play rugby too. It's not just boys.
I agree. One of my favorite teams to watch is the Black Ferns Sevens team, right? I really do. I really do enjoy watching them, and they're a great advert for the game. They play with great joy.
And they just lost to America in the first of the World Series games, World Series tournaments, by the way, this last weekend.
But that's because Stacey Walker hasn't come back from injury yet. Sorry, she's a Waikato girl, so...
So that'll be one of the topics we'll be talking about on the All Blacks edition tomorrow night. It won't just be about the All Blacks. We'll also cover off on the Black Fern Sevens as well, and how they went in the USA for the opening round of the HSBC World Series. Thank you very much, John, for joining me. It has been a pleasure yet again. Everybody, as I've said already, so they'll be coming up is tomorrow. I'll do a video looking at what am I doing tomorrow? Tomorrow was where can host the Rugby World Cup
you need some
in the
sleep,
future?
mate.
I do need some sleep. Then next week I'll be looking at how to even the playing field between Tier 1 and Tier 2 nations. They'll be on For Your Ears only videos for my supporters. Do click down below for that. Don't forget, we're back here 8 p.m. every Tuesday for the Hash Rugby Chat. Thank you, everybody, and good night.